Hi, Ryan. I know you're not going to comment on what's going on specifically at Michigan, but just sign stealing in general, how much you have to be aware of. I know it's nothing new. We talked to you about it before the Clemson game a few years ago. Just how aware of it do you have to be?
Yeah, whether anything regarding that right now, I'm just not gonna comment on today. Just I'd rather just focus on Wisconsin, but I obviously appreciate it. You got to ask your questions, but that's just something I don't want to get into right now. Yeah.
Second row right, Bill Land.
He can ask another question if he wants, because that doesn't really count. That's kind of just the one you throw out there.
Dallin, is it the plan still to redshirt Dallin, or you just kind of wait and see?
No. I mean, we're going to keep pushing that this week and evaluate it again this week. But, we'll see how the week goes. But we're going to push it to see if we can get him in a game this week. Yeah.
Second row right, Bill Landis, Rivals, the podcast.
Right, on the play where Devin got hurt, was there any discussion about whether or not he actually scored on that play? It looked kind of close. I don't know. They didn't announce a replay. But
they did review it. They did, yeah, and they said he was short. Yeah, we knew it was really close. Once he went down, I figured wouldn't have to use a challenge because I thought it was really close. But once that happened, they let me know that they did review the call.
And I know you said I think last night on the radio that you're not going to have him for a few weeks. So does that package of plays get shelved? Do you look at, can Lincoln do any of that stuff, or a Wildcat situation?
He's very athletic, and he can. He's younger, but he is athletic. So we're going to look to see if we can maybe possibly get him in that role. See how the week goes.
Fourth row middle, Tony Gergen, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, with Carnell Tate being as advanced as he is, where does he compare to guys at this time in the past? Chris Olave and Marvin, are those guys?
Similar. I mentioned that to somebody just the other day. When you look at where Chris was that year, Garrett, Jackson, those guys, Marvin, Mech, they were coming on as you hit the mid-year, and then the second half of the season is where they really made an impact. And I think Carnell coming at mid-year allowed him the opportunity to be in that same position and kind of be on the same trajectory.
Do you view him basically as a starter at this point?
He's a contributing member of the offense, and he does. He's got really good skill set. He's got to keep growing and building for sure, but he's somebody that we feel confident putting in the game.
Second row middle, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Just kind of more on the Lincoln stuff. I know that's a guy where we're talking about Dallin in redshirting situations. That was probably the plan with Lincoln as well. How much has that changed? And then also, is Tristan your cleared QB2 with Devin being out?
I don't. I think we'll go through the week and give those guys reps and see how that goes. Tristan has experience. I think they might be 5 or 6 years apart. Talk about different guys. But I think where those guys are. One's a more experienced guy. One is a younger guy that we think has a really bright future here. So both are different, spots in their career. And we'll kind of see how this week goes. Devin's been getting the majority of the reps with the two, so those guys haven't really got a ton of reps. We do practice on Sunday, afterwards, and allow the younger guys to get reps. So that's where Lincoln's got a bunch of his reps. I think he's done a great job of staying engaged. Tristan's done a great job in his role, but now that role is going to change this week. So we'll see how the week goes, and who knows, maybe they both will have an opportunity.
Can other guys maybe play that role, like maybe Xavier, other people? Does it have to necessarily be a quarterback in this situation when you guys go with that red zone package?
No, I mean, we do have guys. Xavier played, a little bit of that in high school, and we've messed around with a couple things with Mecca, but it certainly makes it, going on the road and, with the environment, to put somebody in there like that. I mean, that's kind of a tough spot to be in. So we usually like to use the quarterbacks.
Right behind him, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, it seemed like the running game, you kind of got something going there in the first half, and then in the second half, it really wasn't effective at all. Just when you look back at the film, just what did you see as maybe the biggest issues there?
I wish I could point to one thing, but I think it was a combination again, which isn't good enough. They're very good against the run. Don't get me wrong, but it was there were times where there was something that wasn't fit up front properly, or it was the running back maybe not hitting the hole correctly. there was a couple runs in there that I wish, schematically we had back. But again, I'm just looking at the film. I don't think there was anything there that we just had an extra guy coming off the edge. So, we got to execute it better. We got to coach it better. And, that's on us as coaches to get it done. And, so we'll work our tails off to get it done this week because we need that balance and we got to be able to do that.
How fixable do you feel like those issues are at this point?
I think they're fixable, but we got to get them fixed. That's the bottom line. And so we'll keep grinding on that.
Right behind him, Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, I assume the answer to this will be competitive excellence, but you come off a big emotional win against Penn State.
Yep.
You go on the road to a tough place against a team that maybe hasn't had the success. We've kind of seen this story before with Iowa a handful of years ago. How do you keep the guys at that same level in maybe a game that won't necessarily have the same feel, even though it's a night game on the road?
Right. It's that competitive stamina that you mentioned. I mean, that's the term that we talk about in the, in the preseason. When you look at the schedule, we talk about where we're going to be, and we knew we had to go on the road this year and be road warriors. Notre Dame early on was going to be, a really difficult environment. We knew this was going to be the same way, and so we talked about it on Sunday as a team that we've got to bring it this week. They're playing well. They're a good football team. They're got a really good opportunity to win their side, and we can't let last week affect this week. And if we want to, championship teams bring it every week. They don't have ups and downs and letdowns, so we're not allowed to have a letdown. We got to bring it, and we know it'll be a night game. I think it's Halloween weekend. I mean, it's going to be rocking. We know that. So it all starts with what kind of practice week we're going to have, and we've got to do a great job today of getting out there and putting it on the field and first, second down, then coming back and having a great Wednesday and then building towards it. But, that's something that we've talked about for a couple of years now. You've heard me say that, we're not allowed to have a bad day. We can't do that. And this is an example of going on the road, in the middle to end of the season against a really good team. And, this is always a big challenge for anybody in the conference. And so we got to do a great job this week.
Third row right, Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
Going back to the run game struggles, I know every coach is chasing balance. I get that, but I guess at what point in the season do you just have to accept that you are who you are on offense and maybe adjust accordingly to that?
Oh, we do that every week. Yeah, we're trying to figure out what we do best. We go in there and try to identify the things that we think we can do well, and then what fits for that week. Each week is a different challenge, different styles of defenses in the conference. But that's something we do on a weekly basis.
Is it reasonable to expect that you'll see improvement in the run game that you haven't seen through 7 weeks of the season, that you can still get to that point?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's a valid question. It's at what point? I think there has been signs of that, and so we're going to keep pushing, and we think getting a couple guys back could help as well, help us become more explosive. So we keep pushing. We believe we can do it, and I know we can. I mean, the number one goal is to win and be 1-0 on Saturday night, but you do want to see certain progress in areas that you're focusing on. Some of them we have over the season, some that we need to do a better job of. But now as we get into the home stretch, we got to be playing our best football. We said that, right? We want to be playing our best football at the end of the season, so we got to roll.
Far right, Clay Hall, WSYX.
This may be from the same family of questions, but has the college game ever considered technology in the helmet, audio to, you don't need 6 people on the sideline?
I believe they have. It's come up in meetings, but I don't know where that's at right now.
Like a cost issue or?
Right, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah.
And how do you avoid the distraction of all of that up there? And maybe you just said it.
Yeah, well, again, when you're at Ohio State, there's always going to be noise. Whether it's things that you aren't doing well or things you are doing well. Coming off of a game like we just had was exciting. Our defense played excellent. There was flashes on offense. You win the game. It's your second top 10 victory in first 7 weeks. You have to ignore that noise too. I still come to work every day thinking we're not very good, and I feel like we should have won by 30 points, and you have to have that mentality because whether good, bad, or indifferent, you can't ignore you have to ignore what's going on outside, because what matters is what's going on in this building right here and getting better and winning on Saturday. So that's part of being at Ohio State, and we love that part of it because everything we do is relevant, but we have to make sure we're staying focused and avoiding all distractions.
Far left, Joe Nugent, WCMH.
Do you have an update on Trey, Denzel, and Mecca that will be available this week?
Yeah, we're expecting to have great weeks of practice out of those guys. Expecting to have them ready on Saturday. I know that I said that last week and didn't quite get there, but we're looking to have a really good week of practice and having those guys available.
And facing a man who spent a lot of time in this building, what stands out about what Luke is doing in Wisconsin?
I think it just started when he was at Cincinnati and what he did there and what he built. His teams are always well coached. Certainly, he left a lot behind here as a player and as a coach. Very well respected by so many, and so we know going in that they're going to be well coached. They're going to play hard. They have a bunch of guys on that staff with great experience, and so nothing but respect for Luke, his staff, the team, the program. Wisconsin's always been an excellent program, and Luke's done a great job.
Second, third row left, Jeff Gilbert, Press Pros.
Coach, Travion, when he does play, hopefully this weekend, as you said, how much difference can he make in your running game, and what do you expect?
Well, we hope he makes a big impact. Certainly, we know that he can hit home runs, and he did that in the Notre Dame game, and certainly that was a big difference in what we're doing. We have confidence in all of our running backs, but he does allow us the opportunity to hit a home run and be explosive. So that doesn't just happen. There's a lot that comes with that. But hopefully we get a good week of practice and we can go put it on the field.
Second row left, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
Just to kind of piggyback on the question that Pat asked you before, but you were on the staff in 2017 and 2018 when you had those kind of unexpected losses. Did that experience inform how you have maybe approached things since then as the program's become your own? Are there things that you've tried to emphasize to not have those sorts of unexpected collapses?
Yeah. Every year you learn things. You identify the things that you did well, and then you recognize the things that you have to improve on. And every year you learn. You learn about your staff. You learn about the players. You learn in recruiting how to adapt. But you also learn as the season goes on things that have happened, things that you've recognized where you have to make sure that you're communicating some things that may happen a certain way, and you try to communicate that to your team and make sure that everyone's aware of that so you don't get ambushed. And again, the more experience you have, you try to do the best you can to relay it to everybody to make sure they're prepared, because our goal again is to put them in the best situation to be successful. And so that's why we have to have a great week of practice to make sure we're out in front of this and we're playing our best football on Saturday night.
How would you assess Carson Hentman's performance right now relative to where you expected maybe someone in his position to be halfway through this year, but also with such little experience he has, maybe especially with this kind of offense?
Yeah, Carson coming in had not started a game before, really hadn't played a whole bunch of football. So, we know that he's got he's talented and he's got a bright future ahead of him. And, losing Whippler last year, forced him into action. And I thought, there's been some really good moments out there where he's done some really good things. There's still things he's growing on, just like everybody, but or building on, and he's growing. And, the goal is to have his best football here now be the home stretch, because there's no way to replace, playing on the road in these styles of games, or seeing these different styles of defense week in and week out. We've seen 4 down, we've seen 3 down, we've seen 5 down, we've seen pressures, and those are all new experiences for him, just like a quarterback would be. And for the center, there's a lot of communication that goes on. You have to get everybody on the same page. You have to handle the snap count. You got to handle the snap, and then you got to do your job. So, got to be able to multitask. And he's grown with it. He's building. It's not an easy job. But again, the goal is that he's going to be playing his best football here down the stretch.
Front row right, Austin Ward, the podcast, Rivals.
Ryan, we've seen Kyle when the stakes are highest, meet the moment. We've seen him make throws into really ridiculous windows, and then they're just at times like the easy ones don't seem to connect. What causes that with a young quarterback? How can you work through that?
Well, it starts with practice, being consistent in practice and building that confidence so that, as coaches, we got to continue to put them in situations where, hey, the game almost is easier than practice. And that's where it starts. And then you build the confidence of seeing the look and seeing the throws and making the throws consistently. And that's just what it comes down to, is being consistent, trusting your feet, trusting your eyes, and then making the routine plays routinely, and then taking care of the football. So I think there's definitely been signs where we've done that, and when we do, the offense is rolling. And so we'll keep working on that, and just, like I mentioned about Carson, the goal is that we're playing our best football here over the next month.
The screen to Marvin early, it's hard. I have no idea. It's hard for me to tell if maybe Marvin took a step the wrong way, if Kyle was pressured. When you evaluated that play and we're saying, well, the throw was off target, how much of that on that one was Kyle? How much of it was something that we don't know? Yeah,
we could probably go through the film and go through each of the plays and identify, who was right, who was wrong in these situations. And so what I don't like to do is point fingers one way or another. But the bottom line is, I think that's what I'm talking about with practice. We've got to be so clean that, we take the practice field to the game and that we connect. And it's our job as receivers, as quarterbacks, as coaches to make sure that it's exact on the field. The timing, the spacing, the protection, all of that. And I can't just say it's one thing, but we've got to connect in those areas. We've got to do that. Whether it's first and second down, third down, red zone. So we'll work back. We'll get back at it this week to make sure that we're efficient. Because you can see what's out there. The possibilities are there. It's there. We got to go do it. And if we're going to make this run here, we're going to need to do that.
Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, as far as the helmet technology goes, in the NFL they have the mics in the system, and you just mentioned that, talked about. Would you be in favor of something like that? Would you be supportive of it?
Yeah, I think it's again, it's not something that we're going to discuss right now, because it doesn't really matter right now. What matters is playing this game. But I do think we should definitely consider that, because it would certainly help.
How did you find it in the NFL? Because that was in place when you were there.
Yeah, it was good. The coach on the sideline had the walkie-talkie, and he would be able to communicate, into the headset.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Ryan, the numbers from PFF say that Josh Simmons has had his 3 best run blocking grades in each of the last 3 games. Does that line up with what you guys are seeing in the progression from him? And where do you see him still needing to get better if you guys are going to make the run that you're talking about?
I would say it's the consistency. Yeah, there's some really great snaps of film out there, and you're seeing finish, you're seeing pad level. You're seeing really high end play, and it just needs to be a little bit more consistent. He knows that, and that's not just him. And that's why when someone asks, is it fixable? I think these things are. We just need to be more consistent. But the talent is definitely there.
Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Ryan, this obviously the iron sharpens iron when you guys go good on good in practice. Specifically with the relationship between the corners and the receivers, over the course of the last year, what's it been like to watch those corners compete against them and improve to the level they're at?
That's the thing that we talk about here. You've heard me say that iron sharpens iron. We get each other better every day. It's not just the 12 Saturdays in the fall. It's every day in practice, and guys are getting each other better. Whether it's, I think one of the reasons why maybe, our tackles were able to block the defensive ends this past weekend is because, you're going against JT and Jack every day in practice, and vice versa. I think, JT and Kenyatta and Jack were able to get pressure, on a really good left tackle because they go against our tackles every day. So it's the same thing on the back end with the receivers and the DBs. And I think it allows them to have confidence knowing that if I'm going against this guy who's, one of the better guys in the country, then when I play against some of the other teams and play in a matchup game, I can play with confidence because I know I've seen myself have success against somebody as good as they are.
And off that, when you have a freshman like Jermaine, he's playing his first major snaps in a huge game. What you see from spring to now, from him, is is that what gives you the confidence knowing that, like, I mean, Jim made the point that he didn't even really know how big the moment was. Is that what you
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, that's probably right. He just that was him, and that is him. But he's one of the more competitive guys that we had in this incoming class. He loves to compete, and the moment wasn't too big for him. And now he's got to be consistent. It's one thing to do it. Now it's another thing to do it, multiple weeks in a row. So he did step up in a big way, and he has made a lot of progress from when he came in. But that's part of being a freshman. It's part of it is the football part of it. Other part is just overall the maturation of a young man.
Andy Baxter, let him roll.
Ryan, did you guys know that Jordan Hancock could be quite this versatile? I mean, he feels like a huge part of this defense at this moment. I guess what has been your perspective of his development?
Yeah, we felt like when we were recruiting him that this is what we thought he could be. That we thought there was versatility there between nickel and corner, and that's what you're seeing. Very competitive, very instinctual. And you're seeing it. He works really hard. He's another guy with a great work ethic that is always in here watching film, getting extra work in. He's very serious. He was very frustrated last year with that injury that he had, and so worked hard this offseason, and now you're starting to see his best football.
For that 2021 class, you talked before the season about this was going to be a big year for them. 7 games in now, a couple top 10 wins. I guess what's your assessment of that class and how they've come along?
I think they're getting more and more of these big game experiences, and when you get more battles under your belt, you learn more and more. You become more veteran, and now they're becoming that way, and that makes you dangerous as you head into November. So it doesn't mean anything. We still got to play this week and we've got to keep growing, but it does make a difference when you have guys who played a lot of football. And I just think back on maybe some of the other teams we've had the last couple of years. We've been talented, but not as experienced. So again, I've said this before, we're going to count on that being a difference maker here.
Jeremy Birmingham, the podcast.
Ryan, as you go through a season, there's obviously a ton of things that you're thinking about on a week-to-week basis, tons of different evaluations, minutia. How do you evaluate the job individual assistant coaches are doing as far as their primary responsibility throughout the season? Like, is that a conversation you have now, or does it always have to wait until the end of the year?
No, it doesn't have to wait. I think the first and the easiest way to identify it and evaluate is, are your guys grading out as champions during the game? And if yes, then keep it going. If not, we got to figure out why that is. If your guys are grading out over 80% in a game, then that's the sign that your unit's performing at a high level. And we want all 10 units to be operating at a high level. If that's the case, we feel like we can win any game in on the schedule. But if not, then something's going wrong. And each guy is responsible for recruiting their position, and then developing their position, and then ultimately the performance on the field. So, we're all being evaluated, me included. So, every week is an evaluation, in my opinion.
How much do you look at, like a year ago with Tim Walton's room, very thin depth-wise, and then a lot of injuries, and then you see the development into this season, it looks like night and day. I mean, how do you measure all of those different data points?
Yeah, well, first off, it's the eye test, and I think I mentioned that to you guys in the off season. And it's like, okay, we'll believe it when we see it. But they were getting their hands on balls all off season, and then now you're starting to see production on the field, and that's what you look for. You look for the eye test, you look for how are they practicing, and then ultimately how are they performing on the field.
Tom Moore, Buckeye Huddle.
There have been a couple times in goal-to-go situations, red zone situations, where you've gone heavy, taken Marvin off the field. I think looking from the outside, if you look at how much attention Marvin gets, and I think it's sort of easy to say just throw him out to the field side and have a guy or two chase him out there, and then maybe that gives you numbers advantage, or you got Marvin one-on-one. What's the thinking behind not just always throwing Marvin out there by himself?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good point. When you get down there on the 1 or 2 yard line, we got to get in. It's unacceptable not to get in. So we have long discussions on what gives us the best chance to do that, and we'll keep doing that. And if having Marv out there gives us the best opportunity, then we'll do that as well. But I feel like we got to be able to make a yard or two when we get down in there. And I know there's a lot of people in the box. I get it, but but we'll keep looking at it and making sure that we're doing what's right and putting our guys in the right situation.
All right, Adam King, WBNS.
You kind of joked about winning with defense, but I'm curious, knowing that you have a defense that can go out there and make plays like they did this Saturday, does that change your scheme on offense at all? Does it change your play calling thoughts?
I mean, I think, like, balls on the 2-yard line. We got to get in the end zone. I mean, it's just ridiculous that we're not getting in the end zone in that spot. But overall, I just feel like, we're still trying to score every time we touch the ball. When we get into the second half of a game, or we get into a situation where, the defense is playing really well, we also want to make sure that we're 1-0 at the end of the night, and that's my job, to make sure we're winning. And but that doesn't mean we're not trying to score, 50 points every time we go on the field. We're gonna look to do that. And but as the game goes on, there's certain things where you have to make sure you're not putting your team at risk, and being, foolish.
Dudley and Maurice, Kings of Columbus.
Marv's percentage of snaps in the slot has gone up the last 3 games. Now that also coincides with Emeka, his injury. Yeah. But we sort of talked a lot in the preseason about moving Marv around. And just, can you take us through the process a little bit of when you have a player that good that a defense is going to key on, and yet you find a way to target him 16 times in a game that important, and he has that kind of impact? Like, how did you guys plan that and then execute it?
Well, it's it takes a lot of work. Takes a lot of work by Marv to make sure that we're trying to maximize him as a player and give him the opportunities to win in man-to-man. And I think if you just kind of leave him in one spot all the time, it makes things a lot easier for the defense to key in on him and do everything they can to take him away. So we have to constantly be creative and find ways to do that. And that's our challenge week in and week out. The more efficient we can be in other areas, the less pressure it puts on Marv. So I know that we have to do a better job of taking pressure off of him, but at the same time, we're going to try to find as many ways as we can get him the ball.
And when you decide to go to something like a quarterback run package, like you've done with Devin, certainly there's skill sets involved with the people, but also not that you don't want anyone to get hurt.
Right.
But when you see the number 2 quarterback get hurt on a play like that, is that part of why maybe you don't want the starting quarterback doing that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a part of it. When you're involved in those styles of runs, you put yourself at risk. I thought Devin ran hard again. I mean, he poured it up in there and just came up short. But you have to, that's kind of the risk and reward. And we lost him in that game and probably will for at least a week or two. And so that's what you try to weigh out. What gives you the best chance and what's the risk versus the reward.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
You said on Saturday when you were asked about Kyle that you'd have to look at the tape, and there seemed to be some throws that he missed. He made some good throws, but also some ones he missed. Yeah. When you watched it again, what was your take on it? And is he are you content? That's a loaded word, but with where he is 7 games into his first year as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, there was, like we kind of felt like coming off the field, there was really good plays, and then certainly plays where you like to execute better. I don't think that's unique to Kyle. I think there's a lot of guys who felt that way, and he's in a much different place than he was early in the season. He's got 2 top 10 wins under his belt, and so that there's got to be a lot of confidence there. But there's still room for growth, which is exciting. When we watch the film, I mean, there's things that we did well, and other things that we can do better. So he was critical of himself. We're critical of ourselves as coaches, making sure we're putting him in the right spot. And so if we started out here and we want to get to here, where are we at in that progression? I don't exactly know, but I know that he's still got a lot of great football ahead of him.
On Saturday, you had the punt that hit Lorenzo. Obviously, it took a funny bounce.
Yep.
But there have been special teams blunders almost every week. How concerned are you about that, and what's your solution for that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the play a couple weeks ago when the snap cut, blundered, and then this one right here, the bottom line is that those things can't happen. That's just it. And one, it slipped out of his hands. It can't slip out of your hands. 2, the ball bounced, and JB makes the call, points to it, but Lorenzo doesn't hear him. We got to be louder. That's just what it is. And those are two, strange plays, but they could cost you a game. And so, we've got to be better. We can't let that stuff, because that was a huge swing. Even the ball in the 2, we get a stop, and we're going to get that ball around midfield. We don't, and then we get to put the defense back on the field. So regardless of how that all shook out or took a funny bounce, it doesn't matter. It just cannot happen. And we got to get the ball back in those situations.
And final questions, front row, Tim May on 3, Letterman Road.
Thank you, Jerry. Just 3 quickies. Number one, when y'all watch the play, the third,
You had ones every week.
Yeah, the 3rd and goal out of the out formation, and literally the offensive line came off the ball as one.
Yeah.
One guy was off the line, was a beat late, and that's the guy
that made the play.
When you watch that on video, when you show it to the team, do y'all throw stuff at the screen? I mean, what you know what I mean?
Yes.
What is the reaction, and how do you get that point across? Because that's a veteran guy.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no question. You're exactly right. You hit it right on the head. We probably need to, move him up in that situation, give him a better chance to make that block. But he's done so many great things. So ultimately that's going to come down on us. We got to do a better job of putting him in a better situation. But yeah, that makes literally make us, we can't eat solid food. It's just sick. The fact that we didn't get in right there. But I just feel like we got to put him in a better situation.
The mesh lives, but as Marvin makes that catch and cuts across and goes to the side, Carnell Tate, freshman.
Yeah, great awareness.
Threw really 2 blocks on that play. Yeah. And of course, the game is coming right at him, flopping on that onside kick, and he makes the catch and stuff. How does that elevate him in your mind? And what does it just show you about him and his gamesmanship?
Yeah, gamesmanship and awareness in that spot. And I think there probably was a situation where maybe he could have pushed him in the back, but he didn't, and then he slid off to the next. It's just really good awareness. Great signs for a young player. And then, they see Marv on one side and they see Carnell on the other side. They say, we're going to kick to the freshman. And he makes a play smooth and goes down and game's over. Don't take those things for granted. That's somebody who the moment's not too big for him. He was ready for that. And, again, really encouraging for his future.
And one other thing, Josh Proctor, is he playing like y'all envisioned 3-4 years ago and stuff? When you watch video of him the next day, what's just showing up about him?
I think we've always seen his potential and what he can be. And you're starting to see it more consistently now. And he knows that, he and Lather are a big part of how we're going to play here down the stretch. And both of them have the ability, and you're starting to see way more consistency in that area. They're working hard. They're building confidence. I think you can just physically see that. And so that's got to continue this week.
Coach, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Coach? Like always, appreciate everybody coming out. Everybody on Zoom as well as here in person. When you kind of talk about summarizing the game, we won the turnover battle, which was a positive. Coming from the special teams turnover, but we did not win the explosive play battle, the third down battle, which to me was the most significant one in the game. The sack battle, the drive start battle, we did win the penalty battle. You talk about, we talk about some positives from the game. We went on the road, battled the number 3 team in the country, and had a chance to win the game right down to the end. Protected the football. Thought we handled the crowd noise well. That kind of shows up with the penalties as well. And I thought for the majority of the game, we played like, if not one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense in the country, one of the best defenses in the country, and so was theirs. The field goals were huge. Those were huge in the game. Great to be able to get out there and get those points. Opportunities for growth, too many controllable mistakes, to win in that environment. I thought we tackled too high. We got to tackle lower and be more consistent. And then obviously the story of the game was third down, which impacted a lot of other things on the offensive side of the ball. When you talk about Indiana and Tom Allen, I like Tom a lot. Really good guy. Really good representative of Indiana University and our conference. You talk about kind of where they're at with things, and you talk about their coordinators. Their offensive coordinator, Rod Carey. Rod's obviously got a significant background. Been a head coach at Temple, been a head coach at Northern Illinois. Very, very well thought of, and I think he's done a nice job coming into a tough situation. Obviously, there's a connection there with Pat. Pat hired him at Temple. Offensively, it's hard for me to sit here and say what they are because there's just not a whole lot of data on that because he has not been in the position very long. Jalen Lucas is a guy we're very aware of as a running back, receiver, and return specialist for them, number 12. And then the quarterbacks come in. He's an athletic guy and has done some nice things for him. Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback. When you talk about defensively, it's kind of interesting. They got the Chad Wilt guy with the DC title, but from what I understand, I mean this with total respect. I don't want this to come off the wrong way. We also know the co-defense coordinator Matt Gurry, who I know from when he was at Duke. From what I understand, he's calling the defense. So combination between Matt, Chad, and then obviously Tom has been involved in the defense for a long time. Guys that we've been impressed with, DN number 1, Andre Carter, linebacker number 44, Aaron Casey, and then safety number 6, Philip Dunham. On special teams, Casey Teagarden is their special teams coordinator, has been there now for 4 years. And again, we've been impressed with number 12, Jalen Lucas, as a return specialist, and then also their punter, James Evans. So that's kind of a quick summary. Open up to questions.
Let's go to Rich Garcella and then Mike Gross. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Hey, Rich.
James, last week you talked about the importance of staying true to your identity. How would you define that identity, especially on offense, and do you think you got away from it on Saturday?
Yeah, a couple things. I thought our identity was staying on schedule, converting on third downs, and then either converting on third downs or going for it on fourth down situations. I feel like that had been our identity for the season. We had a lot of respect for their short yardage situation. Their short yardage defense and how they were defending it. But we did not do that. We did not either convert on third downs like we'd been doing or put us in a situation where we were in fourth and short to go for it. I think, one of the questions that you guys have, and I don't know if I answered this clearly after the game or not, but the 4th and 1 that we were going for, which I think was one of the significant plays in the game. To me, in those types of games, there's about 4 to 6 plays a game on either side of the ball that are significant. We were going for it on that 4th and 1. We had 12 guys on the field. If I don't call the timeout there, we're going to get a penalty. And then after that, you kind of lose the momentum and a little bit of the surprise of going for it. And then in my conversations with Manny, we were playing good on defense. We felt like it was the right thing to do to punt there after losing, the momentum and the sense of urgency running out and going for it on fourth down. So I liked our call. But again, we had 12 guys in the huddle, and the official was about to throw a penalty on it for us right there. I think, to me, I guess what I'm saying is our lack of success on third down really kind of changed the game. We just didn't have enough opportunities. We couldn't get into a flow. Didn't get enough touches for people. When you have the lack of success that we had on third down, it's hard to get anything going. And obviously for the most part, our defense was able to do that to them as well. And what they did a good job, obviously, number 18 was a difference maker in the game.
Let's go to Mike Gross and then Neil Riddell. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Mike.
After the game, you said that maybe you could have run the ball more. and you said something about the process of play calling. And I'm asking this because a lot of my readers have asked me this in various ways. But how can you impact the play calling? You personally, James, how can you impact the play calling and also maybe adjust the game plan as the game is going on? What's the process for that? And was that process effective on Saturday?
Well, obviously it wasn't effective, right? I mean, that question is fairly easy to answer. In terms of running the ball and touches, when I went back and actually looked at the numbers, that was not our issue. It was not our run-pass ratio that was our problem, especially, again, when you take the last drive or the last two drives of the game out of the equation when it was kind of normal circumstances. The issue, again, was third down. When you go 0 for 15 on third down, normal third down situations, long situations, short yardage situations, that was the issue. We weren't able to stay on schedule. We weren't able to get into a flow. We weren't able to get the touches the way we would like to get the touches specifically for the running backs. That was the biggest issue. And then, during the game, what I try to do, which we've talked about in the past on both offense and defense, is when I feel like we've gotten conservative and we need to take a shot, I recommend those things. When I feel like we've gotten away from the run game, I make sure that we get back to the run game. Whether it's being aggressive on defense and calling a pressure or making them earn it by playing coverage on a third and long situation. So same operation that we've had here in years past. That really hasn't changed during the game. Our biggest issue, in my opinion, in that game was third down, and that impacted everything else.
Let's go to Neil Riddell and then Donnie Collins. You're on deck.
Hey, James.
Hey, Neil.
Is it obvious, or do you think you guys are lacking, excuse me, some quote unquote money plays in situations that you're just really super confident in that you can go to? Just that. Do you think you maybe have too many plays in the bag, and then when you get to situations, there's too many choices of not going to some of the things? Do you need more money plays, the play you have to have in certain situations?
Yeah, I think obviously when you don't have success, then I think the first thing you do is you sit here and say, okay, are we doing too much? And do we need to tighten the package down and get really good at certain things? It always starts with that, right? I think we looked at that numbers of plays that we've had in each game plan, how many new ideas we've had in each game plan, and I think we're talking specifically about this game because up until then, I thought we had done a good job of, again, playing the game the way we'd been playing the game and managing the game and being able to score points, being able to stay on the field, converting whether it's third down or fourth down, sequencing, things like that. I think the first thing you do is you sit here and say, do we need to narrow it down and make sure that we have these things in the run game, these things in the pass game that we can hang our hat on. I think that's fair.
Let's go to Donnie Collins and then Johnny McGonigal. You're on deck.
How are you doing, James?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. How did the offensive line perform the way you expected against Ohio State? And what do you think they can take from that game the rest of the way?
Yeah, I would say in general, I don't feel like we played up to our standards in that environment. And that's pretty much across the board, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. That's really across the board. And to be honest with you, if I had to say one thing that I would be, after the game with defense, I thought we played extremely well on defense. The one thing I didn't feel like we did a great job of is having an awareness of number 18 the entire game like we went into it with. But obviously, it's hard to be critical on how the defense played, but that would be one. But offensively, yeah, I think you asked specifically about the offensive line. I would say kind of across the board. Obviously, athletically, it was a challenging matchup. We knew that. Schematically, it was a challenging matchup. We knew that. But I thought we had some opportunities that we weren't able to take advantage of.
Let's go to Johnny McGonigal and then Mark Wogenrich. You're on deck.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, John.
Without speculating, it seemed like from the press box that the Chop had a scary situation there on the field. Do you have any update on how he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, nothing more than what we would normally talk about. As from what I understand and from what I see and from what I know, I don't see this being a long-term issue, but you never know when it comes to medical. But hopefully we'll be getting Chop back here soon. But it's not like as you guys know, I'm pretty open when it's a season-ending injury. I don't see that.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich and then Frank Bodani. You're on deck.
Hi, James.
Hey, Mark.
Have you had to make any changes or alterations to the way you prepare or call a game or to your signs because of the alleged sign stealing issues at Michigan? Has that affected the way you've worked over the past year at all?
Well, first of all, I think you do that in general, right? You do that in general. You gotta have a way to disguise your signals. Everybody does it, whether they do it with sheets or boards or whatever it may be. And we made some changes after the bye week as well in how we operate on offense and defense. Specific to that, I probably won't get into what's going on at that other school and the things that are going on. I probably won't get into that, but I think in general, we're always aware of how we signal. Are we disguising it? I mean, what happens is you get to after games and you feel like you called a very unpredictable call in a situation, and they're in the perfect defense for it. And you're sitting there saying, well, how's that? What would ever make you play cover 2 on 4th and 1 and we're in a heavy personnel group? But they're in it and you got a shot called there. Those things kind of make you kind of second guess, and you kind of go back and look at those things and what you need to do to disguise it. And if it happens once, that's one thing, but if it happens over and over, then you're aware of it. So for us, that's something that we always are looking at, but obviously with some of the things that are going on right now, it magnifies it.
Let's go to Frank Bodani and then Corey.
Let me say one more thing on that. I see a lot of people talking about going to the NFL system with the headsets, and I understand that. It really doesn't solve this issue. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but if college offenses are going to decide not to huddle, you still have to be able to get the information communicated to the receivers, to the tight end. Maybe you can verbally communicate it to the O-line, which a lot of people do, but how does everybody else get it? So it's either the coaches are signaling from the sideline or the quarterback signaling from the field, and you still have some of the same issues unless you decide to huddle, which I think you saw us huddle more on Saturday than we typically do.
Let's go to Frank Bodani and then Corey Geiger. You're on deck.
Hi, James. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Frank.
Okay, great. Good afternoon.
You too.
I want to ask you about utilization of Nick and Katron. How do you think you guys have done that, not just in the Ohio State game, but the season? I ask that because I think they're averaging maybe 14, 15 touches a game, but they're arguably two of your most explosive athletes on the team. And I guess at least from our vantage point, the explosive production has not been there. So I just wanted to see what you thought about how they've been utilized so far.
Yeah, so a couple things. Again, I get after this past Saturday, I think before that, I think we were leading the conference in scoring. But I get it. I totally get it. I also think it's kind of hard to say that the overall numbers when a lot of those guys hadn't played the fourth quarter in a lot of games. So if you're just looking at numbers and data, I think it's a little skewed from that standpoint. But your point in general, I still think is a fair one. To this past Saturday, I felt after the game that those guys should have got more touches. When I looked at the run pass, it wasn't as far off as I thought it was. But when you keep going 3 and out, that's the issue. You just don't have enough touches. Just like early in the year, I think we had the game where we had 45 minutes of possession time. Why? Because our defense was getting 3 and outs and we were having a ton of long drives. So you're able to get the opportunities and touches for everybody. In terms of explosive plays, that's a combination of us doing a better job of blocking on the perimeter. That's a combination of us being able to make the safety miss, either make a miss or breaking tackles. And that's also back to what I've discussed with you before about how people are defending us. When you have guys on the outside and you have the production on the outside that concerns people, it changes how people defend you. People are going to load the box up and not allow Katron and Nick to beat you until you prove you can do it on the outside with your quarterback and wide receivers, and somewhat the tight ends. So I think it's a combination of those things more than anything else.
Our last question from Zoom is Corey Geiger.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Corey.
Now that we're a few days removed from the immediacy of the game, I'd like to present something again you were asked Saturday, and that is, for all the success you've had at Penn State, there's the narrative that you don't beat Ohio State or win enough big games out there. Is there anything you'd like to say personally to people who may have that perception of your tenure?
Yeah, again, I think I'm actually glad you asked the question because I wish I would have answered it on Saturday, although I was thinking about that specific game at the time. I think it's more than fair to judge me and my staff for all of it, right? I mean, that's what it's about. The good, the bad, the consistency, the lack of success in that game, all of it. That's totally fair to be judged by all of those things. But I also think it's important to judge the entire body of work, all of it, which I don't need to get into right now because I don't want it to come off the wrong way. But yeah, I think it's totally fair to be judged based on all those things, the whole body of work, the good and the bad.
Please raise your hand and we'll take a mic to you. Mark?
Hey, James. How you doing?
Hey, Mark.
After that game, we saw some pretty raw emotions from players with us, and I could only imagine what it was like in the locker room. Do you have a concern about where those guys are going to be kind of with their head moving forward this season, given how much that seemed to bother them and upset them?
Yeah, I mean, as you guys, you know how hard we work and how much we invest, and that's the players and that's the staff and that's all of us. That's the fans. That's everybody. You know, and when you look at some of the ways that we've lost to these people, whether it's by a point or whether it's by a possession or one score or however you want to look at it or however you want to term it, you know, those are hard as well because you feel like there's opportunity. So yeah, it's tough. But what we got to do is we got to move on and learn from it and get back to stacking days and finding ways to get wins. Because I also believe that we got to make sure that this loss doesn't get us twice. which I think it has happened in the past. Because I think of how everybody in the Penn State community responds to these things. Yeah, I think there was a ton of raw emotion, which when you take how much everybody invests and how much everybody puts into these things, and the physical impact and the emotional impact, yeah, it's in some ways I'd be more concerned if it wasn't.
Hey, James.
Hey, Audrey.
We heard so much this offseason, earlier this season, about Bo Pabula and kind of his mobility. Was that something that you guys were hoping to get into in the Ohio State game with him? We've heard about the package, but didn't see it.
Yeah, again, we have a package every week for him, whether we use it late in the game if the score allows us to, or whether it's mixing it in. Yeah, I think that's more than fair. We have that package every single week. Again, I think one of the things that's challenging, and I keep answering questions this way, but I do think our lack of production on third down limited a lot of things that we wanted to do. Is it easy after the fact to say, yeah, then maybe we should have called it in one of the first 2 plays of a drive? Yeah. But a lot of times you like to do that when you get into a flow, when you get into a rhythm, as a change up, maybe when you cross the 50 or get into the red zone area, you got specific calls for specific things. But yeah, it ended up not being a part of what we did on Saturday.
In the back, T. Frank.
Hey, James.
Hey, T.
I was hoping you could put some context to this stat. Of Drew's targeted passes this year, of his dropbacks, 11% of his targeted passes have gone between the numbers over 10 yards. Is that a function of something that defenses are doing to you, or is there something else going on? And just generally, is that a percentage that you're comfortable with in terms of targeting that part of the field?
Yeah, I think a couple things. We got to be able to attack the entire 53 1/3 width of the field and the entire 120 yards, of the field, or maybe 110 yards, depending on how you look at it. But, yeah, we got to be able to attack the entire field. And if most of our production is coming in similar areas of the field, then it makes you easier to defend. There's no doubt about it. So whether it's throwing the ball on the perimeter from one sideline to the other, making the defense run from sideline to sideline and creating space that way, whether it's play action pass and taking shots over the top of the defense, that's important for us to do. Whether it's getting the ball into your playmakers' hands, is part of it as well, whether that's the tight ends, the running backs, receivers, whatever it may be. That's balance as well. I know that's one of the things that Mike Leach talked about a lot, is he didn't look at balance in terms of run or pass, which is what we've talked about here in our past. But also balance is getting the balls into different people's hands, so the defense has to defend it.
Bob?
James, how are you?
Good, Bob.
I wanted to ask you, Frank, I think it was Frank's question. You talked about how defenses play you, how they load the box, and you said, it's really the quarterbacks and the wideouts have got to do their job and win outside, so it could kind of balance things out as far as how they're playing you. Do you feel you have a true number one wideout at this point, and how big of an issue in your mind is creating separation against the better defenses you're going to play, whether it was Iowa, Ohio State? You're going to see some more. How big of an issue is that right now on the offense?
Yeah, production in the passing game, I think, is obviously something that we're putting a ton of emphasis on, creating separation. And I think that's one of the things that's important when I'm evaluating is, okay, if you're just evaluating the tight ends and the wide receivers in the passing game, sometimes the quarterback can impact that. So take that out of it. How much are we creating separation either on a vertical, on a runaway route? And that's what you can do as a skill player to show that you should be getting more opportunities by the way you separate and the way you're able to get open. And our production has not been there as consistently as it needs to be. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Obviously, there's a lot of things factor into it. There's some times where we got somebody beat and we give up a pressure or a sack. There's a lot of things that factor into it, or the quarterback misses the throw, whatever it may be. But what I try to do as a head coach is when I'm breaking it down, okay, the things that the quarterback can control, did he control them? The things that the O-line can control, did they control them? The things that the receivers, so on for each position. To me, when you're evaluating it in parts, that's what you're looking for. And we haven't had enough production in those areas.
Tyler?
Hi, James.
Hey, Tyler.
Sticking on the wide receiver spot, since 2022, you guys have added 8 scholarship receivers who are on the current roster. Only one of them played before that final drive on Saturday. Dante Cephas, I think, had a few snaps before the final drive. No one else was involved. With as much emphasis,
I think Dante started.
Dante started?
Yeah.
Over Harrison Wallace? You started 2 tight ends.
Okay. When I say start, I'm not talking about like the first play of the game.
Right.
If we go 12 personnel, then
Okay.
yeah, what I'm saying is he's in the starting 11 personnel group.
Okay, well, I think you played like 3 snaps before the final possession of the game. So just factoring that in, you've got this huge cluster of receivers who've either done it elsewhere as transfers or you signed liking what they did in high school. How critical and crucial is it for you to figure out what you've got from that group in the second half of the season? And is it important to make sure that they're getting the game snaps to show exactly what they can offer? Because we've seen it the last couple of weeks go really heavy with those top 2 that I know you like a lot.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a fair question. I think for us, what we've been trying to do really for the last year is we're trying to get some consistency, because if you're constantly just rotating guys in, then it's hard for guys to get into a rhythm. So you want there to be a group of guys that have differentiated themselves and allow those guys to get enough reps and enough opportunities to show what they can do. I think when you look at Trey over the last year, maybe 2 years, and you look at Keandre, there's been enough evidence that they've shown they've done it in games, in my opinion. The big discussion this offseason was who was going to be the third guy. Trey, we lost for a couple games, based on some bumps and bruises and things like that. So all I can do is take the body of work from games, but the things that you guys don't get to see is obviously the consistency in practice as well. That's really what we've been looking for. Consistency in practice of people to separate. I think you guys have heard me say very similar to how you described it. We got a group of guys that I think are all competing, but no one's separating themselves from the group. And that's either in practice or that's in the game reps, which you guys have been able to see. And we're going against a really good defense every single day at practice when we go good on good. So there's really pretty good information to base it on. How are you winning against Johnny Dixon? How are you winning against Kalen King? How are you winning against Daquan Hardy, and so on and so forth? So to me, there's enough information to make decisions on. And we've been talking for a while that people have not separated themselves. The other thing that I think is difficult sometimes for the parents and sometimes for the fans to understand is you also have kind of things I mentioned in the beginning, the missed assignments. Sometimes you guys, don't know a guy ran the wrong route. A guy is blocking on a run play when it's a pass play. Those things factor into decision making as well, because you can be as productive as you want, but if you're making too many missed assignments, then it's kind of a wash. So all those things, factor into it as well. And it may not be even as drastic of blocking, looking at the wrong signal and running we're throwing a pass and you're blocking down the field. It may not be drastic of that. It may be the details of a route supposed to be at 12 yards and you're breaking it at 8 yards. It may be your landmarks, the inside edge of the numbers, and you're actually, in the divide. And that spacing impacts how you stress the defense, and that spacing impacts the quarterback's decision-making and accuracy. It's all those things that kind of go into it, and some of those things are hard for people that don't know exactly what their job responsibilities are to judge them.
John?
Sure. As always, appreciate you guys joining us. Had a really good bye week. Productive practices last week when we went. Was able to get our energy levels back up. One of the things that I said to our team is, to get to where we were in that point of the season with not having breaks from the time we started August 1st took a lot of energy. And I used the analogy of the NASCAR and the pit stop and the importance of that pit stop of refueling the tank, changing the tires, making whatever adjustments we need to make. And it couldn't have come at a better time for us because I thought we had a really good 3 days of the fundamental piece, which whenever we do have these bye weeks, we obviously look at things we need to improve upon, things we're doing well, but also going back to the fundamentals of the game, which, sometimes get lost when you start game planning. And I felt like we come out of it a better team because of the focus on the fundamentals, but also, being able to have, Monday off for our players where we just met, and then, getting off Friday, Saturday, and then coming back in Sunday just for a meeting gave us an extra 3 to 4 days of building up our energy, because focus takes a ton of energy. And as we all know as adults, energy is not unlimited. And so the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. It also allowed us to get much healthier. The Illinois game exposed us with some of the key players not being there, and excited to get some of these guys back and back healthy. We talked yesterday about kind of hitting the reset button. We were able to steal 2 practices a week ago as we prepare for Northwestern, a very dangerous team. They've got their issues and turmoil that's going on, but the way that team has responded to their interim coach and to the coaches, they're a 3-4 team that I'm sure when they look at the schedule, they see this as a game that they have to have. And so I expect to get their best when we head up to Chicago. We're 5-2 with a lot of football left to still be played and a lot of goals still in front of us, which is the exciting part for us. Northwestern has our attention. I think what happened in Illinois, the silver lining for us is that, we have to show up and play to our standard because just showing up is not enough. But playing to the standard, playing winning football, those are going to be really important, as we head to Chicago. It's tough to win on the road in the Big Ten. And so I know going to Chicago for our team, again, we've got to make sure we focus on us. A lot of the times, as I told you, it's not the opponent we face, it's more what we do, and it's going to be even more important, when you go on the road and to do the necessary things to come out with the necessary 6 win for us. But I expect to have a great week of preparation, which started yesterday. Was pleased with the way that went. And then, our game captains, obviously, for this week will be Corey Dyches, Eric Harris, and Fanaje Gote. I'll also talk a little bit about the Kevin Sumlin situation. We're aware of the charges. It's disappointing. As coaches, we have to set the example and model the behavior that we want our players. And we take it very seriously. At the same time, I will also say he's part of our football family, and we're going to support Kevin. To me, it's a personnel issue that will let the personnel and our kind of what we've done in the past kind of dictate how things play out. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys have.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Dave, what's up?
Not much. Welcome back. Bryce Kurtz is kind of their main offensive weapon. What kind of things does he do that concerns a defense like the one you've got?
I mean, obviously, I think, a big play threat every time he touches the ball. A guy that we've got to do a really good job, and he has our attention. But, I think as a whole, when you look at those guys offensively, they know who they are. I think the way that we have to approach it is we've got to start with stopping the run first and foremost. And if you look at the quarterback that started the last game, he's the guy that started the game against us a year ago and gave us fits with the QB scrambles and the designed quarterback runs. And so when I talk about stopping the run, it's not just the running backs, but it's also the quarterbacks and doing our part of making sure that we have the correct gap control. But I also think one of the things that showed up when you evaluate the first half of our season is we've given up some explosive plays that weren't competitive explosive plays. I mean, plays where it looks as if we've blown coverage because of bad eye discipline, and that's something that we've worked really hard because I can tell you that the teams that have hurt us with the explosive have come off of taking advantage of our inability to play with great eye discipline on the back end, and that's going to be really necessary for us to come away with the win up in Chicago, playing really good eye discipline defense on the back end while concentrating our efforts to stop the run.
Hey, Coach.
Taylor.
Is Kevin Sumlin with the team this week?
He is not.
Do you expect him back anytime this season?
You know what? It's it's a personnel decision. We've handled these situations athletically in the past, and I think that we'll follow those same suits. But by being a personnel matter, I'm not going to get into the weeds with it.
Hi, Coach. One of the things you mentioned after the Illinois game was getting back into a rhythm for the offense. What kind of adjustments do you make in the preparation, and how do you evaluate it during this week of practice, how their rhythm is going?
I don't want to give away all of our sweet sauce, the stuff that we're going to do this week, but getting back in the rhythm is what I call doing what your players can get executed. Calling the plays that fit the personnel we have. I'm a big believer in you don't ask your players to do things that they don't do well until you build up the skill to be able to do them well. And to me, getting back in the rhythm on offense usually starts with the quarterback and doing the things that he can get executed at a high level. And then the next piece is accentuating the playmakers and making sure that they're involved in the offense while also designing ways to get your best players opportunities and touches. And so to me, getting back in the rhythm is those things. It's playing fast. It's being efficient on 1st and 10, which allows us to stay on track. Those are all the things we consider being in rhythm.
Hey, Coach.
What's up?
Do you anticipate any disciplinary action for Coach Sumlin?
Of course.
Okay. And any specifics on what that might be?
It's the personnel issue. I'm not going to get into the weeds with it. So you can ask me a million different ways. In personnel issues, I don't put it out what we do to our players. I don't talk about what we do with our coaches. It's a personnel matter. It'll be handled. If you look at the track record of what we've done in the past, you can probably have an idea of what will take place.
And then with your offense, it seems like it's been sometimes more explosive than efficient. How do you kind of want that to progress as the season goes along?
I like both. I like to be efficient and explosive. And efficient to me is staying on track on 1st down, being able to be in the 3rd mediums. When you look at when we've been good on offense in games, it's usually a good 1st and 10 play where we're in 2nd and medium. The 3rd mediums where we have the ability to run, pass, take advantage of the skill we have. So I like to do both, be efficient as well as continue to be explosive, because as I've talked about here, the winning formula is creating explosives.
You need to become more efficient with the
Execute better.
Hey, Coach.
Brandon, what's up?
Nothing much. So you guys have kind of struggled since you became head coach after the bye week. I don't think you've won yet. Just did you do anything differently maybe last week, either practice or rest, just to kind of switch up things to kind of get a win?
The past doesn't define our present.
And then how do you avoid kind of a sluggish start to the game, kind of get it back going, knowing that they've had a couple of weeks off?
Put together openers on the offensive side of the ball that we can get executed defensively, making sure that we're simple early to have an idea of how they want to attack us. As I said, get back to playing with the eye discipline. A lot of times when we've gotten hurt on defense, it hasn't become a structure issue. It's been a eye discipline or a gap discipline issue. We went back to the basics of how we do things, maybe reinstall some of the things that we haven't been doing the way we want to get it done. Offensively, not starting sluggish starts with, again, being efficient on 1st and 10, doing the things that our quarterback can get executed, and then going out and executing at a high level.
Coach, going into the bye week, you mentioned that in the Illinois game it exposed some of the things that can happen when some of your players are banged up and you're missing some players. How would you rate the team's recovery from those injuries and kind of a status update on how the team's doing injury-wise after the bye week?
We've got quite a few guys back. I know Tarheeb still has been out for the last, I want to say, 3 weeks, 2 games maybe. We expect him to be back. Who else was out? Ramon Brown is back now this week. We expect Ramon to have some opportunities this week. Who else was on the list? Oh, Dante Trader has been practicing this week. Corey Deitches, who missed the week ago, is back. We have most of our guys back healthy, ready to go. And like I said, the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. Would have loved to enter the bye week with a little better feeling than what we have now. We've gone 3 weeks. If you count the bye week without having success, and as I told our team, it's important to try to flush that toilet that's been sitting there for 3 weeks.
Hey, Coach, how's it going? So now sacks and back-to-back games for Donnell Brown. What is kind of his versatility? How does that impact your defense?
Yeah, I'm glad to see that out of Donnell, because when we brought him here, that was what we expected out of him, and he's one of those guys that's a high motor, high effort guy. He made plays earlier in the year in the passing game where we dropped him in the coverage, but now I think you're starting to see the skill that we expected, and he's become a guy that people have to game plan against, because he has been disruptive and has created chaos plays with the sacks and the tackles for losses, and we hope to continue to build with that with Donnell.
You talked about your kind of expectations for him, but that jump from FCS to Big Ten play is obviously real. And has his kind of early production surprised you at all, or is it something that you've expected all along?
No, if we've recruited him here, there's no surprise on our part that we've done our homework, and I think we have a track record that our evaluation process just works out pretty well for us, so he's what we expected. I'm glad to see when you recruit a guy that you get that type of production to show like, hey, we kind of knew what we were talking about. He's a guy that, he played on the FCS level, but as I found, there's a ton of players that played FCS football that have the ability as they develop. They may be late bloomers. Things come a little later in their career for them, and we've gotten a lot of help from a couple of FCS players, and Corey Bullock, who's the other guy who's back, as well as a Donnell Brown, that both came from that level and both have exceeded the expectations. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't know, Colin, you were done. I guess I was noticing that Maryland's had fewest rushing attempts in the Big Ten. Why is that? I know there's other teams with 7 games that have more.
Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know, because maybe you have maybe 12 less than Ohio State. That next has 231 rushing attempts.
Do you think the amount of rush attempts plays a major role in anything?
I don't know. I just asked and noticed it.
Okay.
Decided to ask.
No, okay. I just thought maybe you had a theory behind it that would help me, but we want to run and pass, as I've said in this quite a few for the last few years. How we run and throw and how many times is dictated based on what the defensive structure allows us to do. If you look at our efficiency, we're probably a little more efficient in the passing game than we are in the running game. So I will lean on doing the things that are giving us an opportunity to have success, but we never go into a game to say we want to have 50% run, 50% pass. We have to develop our team to be able to do both really well. So if you do your research and figure out that plays a part in the winning, let me know, because I don't. I'm being real with this. So if rush attempts is a key to winning, I'm going to run the ball more.
Mike, what was your reaction to last week's news about Michigan at the center of the sign stealing situation?
I was surprised because, I didn't know anything about it. Didn't bother me. It goes on in college football now, maybe not as elaborate as maybe that, but I'm saying, we're a team that's a no-huddle team, so we signal a lot. We have all types of anti-spying techniques where we switch who's the lead signal guy, who has what. It's not anything that I knew about. Don't know if it had any effect in anything we've done.
knowing what you know and knowing that you play them later next month, will that cause you to alter the way you do differently?
Yeah, we'd have to. We'd have to decide whether we want to wristband things, whether we change our signals based on if someone has them. You know, those things do come into play, but I'm more concerned about Northwestern than I am worrying about Michigan down the road.
Hey, Coach. Wanted to ask about Neo Avery. Do you guys expect to have him back in temp soon? And if not, is there any talk about potentially just trying to redshirt him for this year?
No, I have no update on it. That's a medical deal. I don't get into medical a lot. When they tell me he's available, you know, I don't know if you know it here, but football is separated from medical. All the medical decisions are made by our doctors, our trainers. When they tell me people can play, I start preparing for them to be able to play. Thanks, guys.